we're going to go ahead and start our public hearing for the
Excited to be here tonight to be here providing our budget proposal. I feel like we've worked really hard on the budget since our process started. I mean, it really started in the fall, but picked up when the governor's budget came out in late January, and been working really hard. You know, with the leadership team who's here tonight, I want to thank them for all the work that they've put in. Adam especially, and Jen, members of the Finance Committee, Chris Martin, Glenn Sexton. I think we've made some progress in terms of our communication and collaboration with the town. I think there's certainly some ways to go, but I think we made some initial first steps, and one thing I certainly learned in this process was making sure that you know, we're going to get our initial iteration of the budget out to town leadership a lot sooner in the future. I think that first joint meeting we had was really helpful, clarified some of the questions we had about process and timelines and calendar, and you know, in some ways it did feel like a bit of a crunch, but we've stayed in communication with the town, with members of our subcommittee, like I said, myself, Adam, members of the Finance Committee, and Select Board in developing this budget. This slide people have seen before. Our strategic priorities continue to work to offer innovative and continuous learning experiences, identify proper resources to sustain best possible learning environment, celebrate success and engage our community, and focus on social, emotional, and physical well-being. That, along with some of the priorities that we developed this past summer, have budget process. And the priorities, and anyone who's been watching along the ways has heard me say these things many times. You know, our priorities, and I think these are some of the places where we're going to continue to have to do some work in the future, but we want to make sure that we're providing the best for our teachers and students, instead of always having to do the best with what we have. We want to provide high quality instruction for all students. We want to provide resources, materials, and training for staff to support all students, provide social emotional learning and support, and extracurricular activities, and equip our schools with 21st century technology. In terms of budget development, this is a slide that I went over at the public forum a few weeks ago, but we worked to, the research phase, we worked to identify a zero-based budget, really building from the ground up to identify the specific needs in each of our schools. But it isn't just about the schools. It comes down to pupil services, it comes down to operations, maintenance of the facilities. There's a lot that gets taken into account as we begin this process. Analyze the work that we're doing and try to make decisions that provide our educators with those tools and resources they need to deliver that high quality education to all students, as I referenced in our priorities. The leadership team, as I mentioned at the onset, really has been involved all the way through. I think, like I said, Adam and I have worked closely. We've tried to make sure that we were in good communication as well as the staff at both schools, certainly. And I think that's one thing I'm open and looking forward to feedback from the staff on how this budget process played out versus years past. I think we definitely took some steps in the right direction, but always know that with feedback we can improve. And then the next step after approval will be managing that budget to make sure that we're doing the things that we say that we're going to do for our students and staff, to make sure that all students feel supported, to make sure all staff have the resources and materials that they need to best support students. Another familiar slide. These are some of the expense drivers. One in terms of inflation, I think it's not just about inflation, the cost of things. There's collectively bargained agreements that also drive our budget, and I think when we were looking at the drivers, we considered that as part of this, but I think as I've reflected over the past couple weeks, while yes, it is part of that, it almost deserves its separate bubble. You know, collectively bargained raises account for approximately a 2% increase in this year's budget. So before we start with anything, you know, we realize that those agreements are going to drive some of our costs. We also recognize that those are the people that are going to be there to support our students, the nurses who are going to be in the clinics, the paraprofessionals who's going to support students and staff, our administrators who are going to identify grant opportunities and lead professional development. Those are the people, and our budget is about 80% personnel accounts for about 80% in our budget, and I think that's really important. And you know, that's something that we do value in developing this budget, and I don't know that it was explicit enough as we discussed it, so I do want to point that out. Increased costs in special education, you know, the outdated building next door, there's budgetary impacts to the work that we have to do there, technology, and another thing that I mentioned before, we're educating a different demographic in many ways than maybe Granby has in the past. Since the 2018-19 school year, we've an 11% increase in low-income families in our district. Funding comparison, I think like this is a popular in our budget presentations and many budget presentations, but year over year doesn't always tell the story because there's so many variables, so many things that change from year to year, be it student graduation, different needs for different students. So it isn't always apples to apples, but you know, this is the funding for the past 3 years. I think FY21 is somewhat of an anomaly in many ways, being that was the year that we were fully remote. There was a lot of unknown going into that year. Last year ended up being, FY22 was that year, FY21, some of the costs changed as the pandemic started. And then into this year, we do see a reduction in our in-kind costs from last year. So it's this bottom number. Adam has described it in the past as this is the cash or the check that we ask for from the town. You know, one thing I will point out a few times here, in working with the town, they asked us originally, last time I spoke publicly and with the school committee, we had a gap of about $729,000. In those meetings with the town manager, finance committee, select board, the town asked if we could get to about $400,000 over net school spending. You'll see this says 600. I have proposed to the town that we have had some capital improvement requests that got moved through, one for the kitchen and another for the gym, the locker rooms, ventilation in the gym area. And we have the school lunch account that we do have some excess funds in. So I did reach out to the town manager and said, you know, we did get that 400, but some of those cuts would really hurt us. They would have a significant impact on how we operate. if we're able to provide that offset, that use that $200,000 to offset the cost for that that kitchen project, the capital improvement project, could we then repurpose another $200,000 into our operating costs? Because we have more flexibility there. We don't have a lot of flexibility with that account. So that would allow for that. And really, it's a net zero for the town, right? They were saying we would be at 400,000. They asked us to be at 400,000. Essentially, it says 600,000, but our plan is to give $200,000 to that project. So it comes out in the wash as a net zero, and that's how we landed on this bottom number, this 9,128,912. That is that cash or check that Adam says we are asking for from the town. Again, this goes through each budget item. I will point out right from the beginning, this is not that 9.1 on the bottom, because this does not take into account any of the offsets that we've built in. So the Title I, anything from special ed revolving, from our ESSER money that we've built in as offsets, this number does not take that into account. So once you offset that $1.8 million, that gets us to that $9 million number that was on the previous slide. That we proposed, and this next two slides are not all encompassing. So if you think back to the budget, our initial budget, our first draft, we asked department heads, and when I say department heads, I mean Director of Pupil Services, Director of Finance and Operations, not building-based department heads. We asked our department heads and school leaders to build the budget that they felt we would need to provide high-quality instruction to all students and make sure all teachers, all educators had access to resources, materials, and training to support all students. So with that in mind, they built that budget that, again, if you think back, we were at about a $3 million gap. And offsets got us to 1.2. Then our initial round of cuts got us to that 729,000. The next round was where we had to start to get to that 400,000, which was the ask from the town. These are actual proposed reductions. So we had something in the budget that we've had to reduce as a result of that. And all of these are going to have an impact on our budget. So these are things that are not present in the budget, that at least not present in their original iteration, that the budget that you will vote on tonight. So come back to these slides, certainly if people have specific questions. But those were reductions. The next slide is proposed cuts. These cuts that were in our budget that are currently in our fiscal 22 budget that will not be in our 23 budget. So I think it hasn't always been clear about what the actual cuts are versus what we cut or what we reduced from our proposed budget. These are positions that we have currently, or stipends that we have currently, that will not be in place in FY23. That being said, this is a good time to point out, and it's been pointed out many times before, that our budget is built on projections. We are in a position where we must build our budget on the information that we have now. And there are many variables that could change. Example, last week, we got our fuel cost in for next year, significant increase, significant, close to $70,000 for the year, just for the oil. It's about $1 a gallon that went up. So that could change again, potentially, but that's the information we have right now.
So with that increase, does that mean more proposed cuts? to cover that increase.
That,
These encompass
this
that.
Okay.
encompasses that.
Okay.
Yep, which is why when we offered the $200,000 to put towards the kitchen project, it allowed us some additional flexibility that we would not have had. That was, I would categorize it, that's a creative way to say, we can maintain some of these things, we can some of these costs, but when you look at what the town's giving us, it looks like 600, but we're giving back 200,000.
It's just in a different bucket.
Yes.
Because we can't touch that lunch money for anything else. We
Yeah,
can't use
it's
that for
just
the operating budget, so.
Very specific
Right.
use, school lunch specific uses for that. So again, Steve and I came up, tried to come up with some creative ways because again, we did like the oil, incur some last minute increases. So as we were talking it through, I've said this before, fortunately and unfortunately because of COVID and the free meal waivers that we've had over the last couple of years, we have a significant surplus in that school lunch account. And again, not many uses for it, so I think we can do with it is kind of help offset some of that capital cost with money.
And I also just want to point out that what we've requested for a capital expenditure, still, nothing is set in stone. That's something that will be voted on at town floor. So the
Correct.
total cost of the kitchen, less the $200,000,
Mm-hmm.
is all up in the air. The town may not vote to approve the capital expenditure, either one of the two that we put
Correct.
on the floor. So if we get voted down, that money will just stay in the account, or is there something that we can do with that small amount of money to help us fix the kitchen?
So yes, so the answer to both your questions is yes. Yes, that money, the proposed 200 that we offered would stay in that account.
Okay,
And yes, we can use that money to make repairs to the kitchen, however,
some duct tape and stuff to make it.
yeah,
work,
however,
essentially.
yes.
Yeah,
it's just- yep,
I'm being a little flip, but
Yep, yes.
I just want to make sure that that 200,000, it's clear to whoever is watching and to myself that that money is intrinsically tied to the warrant that is separated out for the capital expenditure.
Correct.
We're not just going to cut a check back to 200,000 for the town.
Correct.
Because it's all tied together. It's a package deal. Yes? Okay.
Yep. And that's an amount we, at this time, based on projection, based on what we have now, projections through the end of the year, that's an amount we're comfortable with contributing to the project if it moves forward.
Okay.
And again, to your point, if it does not move forward,
The money will just sit
we're
there in the
not
account.
out that $200,000. And hopefully we get to a point where we can have that discussion about moving forward with repairing the kitchen and we can,
Okay.
contribute that money. But that's an amount that we're comfortable with at this point.
And again, that still puts us at that number that the town manager had asked us to get to.
Right.
Yep.
Clarifying question for myself. I'm sorry.
So again, these are actual cuts, and I don't think that has been clear in the past, so we wanted to make sure. All that being said, like I said, budget's built on projections. There are still things that could change between now and town meeting, between town meeting and the beginning of the year. We could hire somebody at a higher cost for a position. We could hire somebody at a lower cost for a position, which, again, that's how the budget works every year. So if it's at that higher cost, then we have some work to do to say, like, is there anywhere that we can make that work? If it's at a lower cost, we might then be able to say, oh, we can build tutoring stipends back in. We can build this 0.2 of a guidance counselor back in to make that position whole. So, right, once our budget is approved by the town, because it's built on those projections and the information we have today, there are still things that could change one way or another. So something to keep in mind for people.
And just to kind of further that point, the revenue offsets that we're projecting, they could go up, they could increase, which would, then limit what we need. They also could go down. So right now, how we do it is I build in a minor % increase into our grants. The choice number we use is the one that we know now, and that's good until October 1 when we submit, that number could change. We could see an influx in school choice students, we could see a decrease, which would then decrease what we propose as an offset, and we'll have to do some reshuffling. So the offsets are kind of a snapshot in time. So to Steve's point, you know, what we have right now, the information available to us, this is the budget that we are proposing, but things are likely to change one way or the other throughout the year.
In the kindergarten position, I'm just thinking of, so is, we have how many kindergartens right now?
We were planning for 2.
So that,
This year, you mean? I'm sorry.
no, like, so going for this fiscal year 23.
Yes, we are planning for 2
Two
kindergarten classes.
So this means only one kindergarten class?
No, this year we're at 3.
Okay.
This plans for us to go from 3 to 2.
Okay.
And to clarify, that position, I believe, hopefully, we're not cutting an actual teacher, though they're just moving to a different area within the
As of
school.
right now, it looks like there'll be teacher cuts.
Okay.
Again, lots of things change between
Right.
now and the beginning of the year.
That salary, that 62,614 is for a position, but the way people are hold multiple certifications, it could be
Yeah.
somebody different,
Right, so there is some shuffling that's going to go on. We also have 2 people out on leave for planning to come back with long-term sub. So there's a lot of shuffling that will happen, but this cut doesn't mean that we won't have the same people in the building, but it does mean we may not have the same people in the
Numbers are holding to be able to do 2 kindergarten classes.
as of April 12th. 3 still. So it provides us still with a little bit of wiggle room. Yes. I think there's some other things that aren't on the cut list that are impactful too. That, for example, we will open a 3rd half-day pre-K, and the half-day pre-K teacher will also a special education teacher, so the pre-K, that person will cover, but we'll also lose a 0.5 in services for special education, because they're gonna be. So, that's not a cut monetarily, but services are impacted by that.
So have we already do hiring for that other pre-K position? I mean, I guess
It's
it's
a
like
current employee.
Okay, I'm just wondering, is the balancing, is it more important to have the services, or is it more important to open another pre-K?
Both.
Well, both is not necessary, I mean.
But this is how we're making
You're being
it.
flipped like I am,
Right,
but, you know,
but-
like, if someone held you to it, which, I mean, I get it, but, like, are the services to maintain a full-time position for services, is that more I mean,
Well, we wouldn't do it if we couldn't make services work, but again, so much can change between April 12th and September 1st. If there's an increase in services for certain students, or IEPs change, or more students going on IEP,
right.
that could have an impact.
So I just, I feel like I'm gonna be super difficult, and I don't mean to be, but if we can make it work with cutting the services down to a half, those are the kinds of things where they come back at us and say, the collective they, we all know who I'm talking about, like, but was that person not busy for the whole part of the day, that they could do two half things?
No, I think it impacts people's caseloads, I think, and we are also offering more services. We're gonna have more students in pre-K, so that brings in a whole another group of students that we're currently not bringing in right now.
No, I'm good.
Please ask.
No, it's the line. I'm staying on this side. Yep, I'm good.
So this is the proposed budget. Some additional detail, right? So it starts with chapter 70 and then the required local contribution. We have that placeholder for $600,000 for the town. Again, reminding people that $1,000 that the town asked us to get to. But by us being able to put money towards the kitchen project, it becomes that net zero. And then the bottom number, that 9,128,912, that is the total allocation to the town. Again, to use Adam's language, that is that check or cash given to the schools from the town to operate.
Probably could do the math, but do we know what the percent beyond last year's that is? Because I know like that's something that the townspeople are always looking at, is how much the budget is increasing by department, by percentage.
So the total budget, I believe, was about a 5% increase. The increase in what we're asking above net school spending was 3%.
Thank you.
And the slide, I don't know what slide it is the slide where there's a
The
three-year
percentage next to it.
comparison, yeah, on,
This one.
nope.
But I didn't know like the total budget.
Yep.
You know
But
what I'm, but I guess like
Just
you
while
can
you
look
have
at-
that up, because I think there was some confusion last week.
Yes.
This is the percent that contributes to the
To
total
the
budget.
total, it's not an
It is
increase, so
not
that's
an
why,
increase
I
per
laid out.
Department.
It was kind of easier to lay out all three, so unfortunately people can do the math themselves, but it was the cleanest way to do it, to show really year over year. There's a big increase, there's a big decrease this year from East Meadow compared to last year, and that's really, you'll see the increases in sped because we moved the positions that were last year labeled under East Meadow, we moved them to sped. We identified those are probably better in the sped budget, so you'll see a decrease in East Meadow, but it's made up in that sped. But you'll see essentially the percentage of the budget each year for these departments is relatively the same.
The big increase in transportation, which is not really an increase, it's back to what we would normally be spending.
Yep.
It still remains at 8%, which is interesting. Percent of the portion, it just,
I mean, those decimal places are out 3 or 4. So it could be a little more than 8%.
Sure.
But yes.
but overall it comes up to 100%, so that's fine.
Yep. Yep. And again, this was asked to kind of show at the public forum. Someone had a question about this, and again, I'll have to do the math, but it was the cleanest way to kind of show year over year.
That this adjusted total over here on the right does not account for the offsets, so that is why you see that difference between that 10.9 and this 9.1. So that
Offsets the 1.5 plus the 300,000. We just haven't identified them specifically yet in the budget. And instead of kind of messing with all these numbers last minute to make it work, and then we just, that number at the bottom of 9.1, because I know this has been confusion, even number to vote on, it's that 9.1. So I wanted to show our operating budget is that $10.9 million. That is the actual cost to run the school district. 9.1 is the actual money that we will receive from the town. So operating budget is the $10.9 million.
The numbers, just out of curiosity, and I've seen this a million times and it's just staring at me differently today. East Meadow is considerably higher than the high school. And what makes up that difference? Is there that many teachers here at East Meadow?
Say right off the bat, it's the difference in paraprofessionals between here and contributes to that difference.
Questions? The proposed reductions are happening either way, right, at this point with that final number?
At this point, and those aren't all of them, but yes, this is what got us to that number.
What other ones are there? Like, are they all
So the
small,
other,
much smaller amounts?
there are
And
other
are they
things that were
reductions or
not
cuts?
part of, like, this year's budget that we had built in that first iteration of our budget that we scaled back. So, for example, at the junior, senior high school, Ally had built in a second world language teacher. So that was 57,000 was the average that we used. So that was something that was in that budget that we don't currently have, that got cut out of.
Reduced.
Right, that got reduced. It built in that $63,000 for projectors at the junior, senior high school, that got reduced. So those were the things that.
So those were, reductions were things we wanted, but we haven't had. We've cut are things we currently have that we're losing.
And no, so this proposed reduction, some of these things are like building substitutes. We've had that, but we reduced that line by $5,000 at both schools. So we still have building substitute, an account for building substitute in the budget, but it was reduced by $10,000 total.
Cuts are actual, we're taking that whole amount and removing it from the budget. I think, again, that was some confusion or some questions around a reduction versus a cut, and rightfully so. I think we
Right.
might have been kind of mixing our messaging as well.
Right, well, and just like looking at this, so the building substitute line, I appreciate and understand how it is, but these are the kinds of things that I feel like we end up having generate more questions on. So, so the staff PD we've had, so we reduced the budget, nursing stuff, so all of those things we've had and reduced. So which ones are the ones that we don't have, or you do not really have them listed because they were part of, that's where I'm confused now.
Right, so like, for example, in the last presentation, we had the snow blower, the UTV
Okay.
that had been built in, hoping to do some of those things, but those got removed in the first round
Okay,
of scaling it back.
sure.
I mean, I don't know what word we want to use, cut or reduce, but from our original budget, is the number that we reduced. So we're essentially saying 705,000 beyond what we're asking for is to operate our schools at optimal capacity. We recognize that's not a number that the town can do, so that's the work that we engaged in right away. And that original, I think in that first presentation, we had made reduction of about $483,000. After meeting with Chris in the finance committee, when he asked that 729 was the gap at that point, he asked if we could get our budget close to 400,000 over. So we went through that, provided him with 4 categories of cuts or reductions that we could make, and basically said, like, the first category are things that, would hurt, we could live with. Second category would have more of an impact. Third, fourth would be real, and then we got the feedback from him. Number hadn't changed, so we went to work. There were certain things in that last category that he identified that we were like, well, so we built that back in, and then he had suggested, for example, that kindergarten teacher remaining in the budget. Keep some of the other things, kindergarten teacher.
Talk to me about this curriculum instructional materials.
Cuts.
Proposed cuts,
Top one.
second slide. And first slide, honestly, but
Which journeys that
Oh.
was.
So many of these are, and Sue, I might need to call you up here for this, but are materials that are currently being used, gizmos for math and science, mystery science, plaid phonics,
Journeys.
journeys. So some of them,
and to that effect too, like the textbook replacement. Like, to me, like, those are areas that I want to make sure that we're, you know, talking about having these kids having the similar education to kids around here, so.
Right, so the cuts associated with literacy.
Added
Products that
pieces,
we
yes.
had, like the phonics,
Yep.
and we just sort of subscription fee for journeys that we were paying. Sixth grade, and so we don't have, we can cut those out of the budget because we can pay for them.
in Ally's budget about textbook replacement. Right, a contingency to be built in if, like, it wasn't to replace textbooks that have gone out of date, it was to replace textbooks here and there that you might need.
If somebody lost their books or whatever. We're doing everything we can to try to make sure the teachers have everything that they need. It impacts curriculum is dates that shift in place all the grades at once. So ideally, we would, you know, have a whole process. I think what we ended up to get the new curriculum. I mean, I would still go through the whole process of choosing what buy some of it out of
Is that there will be other grant
Yeah, and
opportunities
so
similar to
keep
what
my-
we saw with the ELA literacy. There was a math opportunity and I think it was due in eliminating then the ELA.
anything else about curriculum.
Thank you.
Like, before you go, like the ILT stipends, that's another place where we run the potential, like curriculum-wise, instructional leadership, that certainly could have an impact. You know, it's not specific to a curriculum need, but I think it's empowered teacher leadership, and you know, it's something that we've had for 4 or 5 years.
Thank you.
Guidance counselor, is it .8 that's cut or .2 that's cut?
.2 that's cut. So this went from a 1.0 to a .8.
And nurse, was that COVID related, that one FTE?
Yes, so we could try to keep that in the budget for one more year, but I think we're going to continue as this budget gets pushed through. We're going to continue to look to see where there might be some savings and say, you know, see how next year goes. We're going to keep our eyes open for.
And there's no ESSER money left to be able to do that.
So there is ESSER money left, so we're proposing that we offset $300,000 of ESSER. That will leave us with around another 500 this year. Certainly something we could consider, but it builds a considerable cliff.
No, I'm not saying
But-
to use more than that. I'm just, I
Yes.
know that there are ESSER offsets.
Yes.
So is all of that 300,000 already accounted for specifically? Or is there a way that we can put the nurse in that part and, you know, like, again, more robbing Peter to pay Paul sort of a situation, you know, if it's all flexible and movable, is that something, you know, I don't know what you're covering with the 300,000.
Yeah, so quickly on that, like that number originally was 450, and we were gonna propose that 450 be part of the kitchen project. And then as we went through budget discussions and realized we needed to use it to actually offset our operating budget, you know, and then when we said, okay, we can use exactly what in the budget that $300,000 will offset. That nurse probably be the best fit on that, but as of right now, that's not something. Next couple months, things might change, and maybe we can, based on those offsets, the nurse is not included.
We're gonna have to look for places.
So we're gonna
for
have to,
ESSER money to
yeah,
fit
and
into.
I mean, honestly, I don't like this word, but full transparency, right? Like, we're not supposed to be using that ESSER money to offset our budget. We're supposed to be, 20% of it needs to go to social emotional needs, you know, learning loss over the last couple of years because of the pandemic, and we're saying we're gonna use that to keep doing our everyday things, right? Where, in this case, the nurse who we hired, who's on ESSER 2, fits that perfectly, and we're saying right now we can't do that. Again, that can change, right? Like at this point in time, we're saying no, but that could change. But yeah, those ESSER funds should be helping us to, you know, bring new things in and not just continue to fund what we do.
Right, it should be a one-time use of spending. Did
And-
we offer it up, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, yes, their choice but to. And again, we got about 658,000 in ESSER 3. 20% of that has to go towards social emotional learning, learning loss for the pandemic, and then the rest can be used over a 3-year period. It could have started this year. We decided not to, so really we have 2 years to use that. We're going to use 300 of it next year, and that's where Steve gets the 200,000 over the next 2 years that we can use to do other things with. So that number, it's safe to say, will probably change, go up and down over the next couple of years, but that's what.
I feel like, yay.
Everyone's feeling this in surrounding communities, you know, we're not alone in having to have these conversations, unfortunately, it's.
Agreed, and I think one that, to try to find a silver lining, that I'm encouraged by is a little bit more from the town. If we think back to our December meeting, I think we walked out of there wanting more. I think we got some of that in our first meeting. I better understand some of the things that we could do early on in the process. If this is the budget that is passed by, approved by school committee, my expectation in talking to the town manager, like, really, it's set up through the select board, but because we got to that 400,000 over net school spending, my hope is that this is what goes on the article, and it's a majority vote at town meeting.
Not asking for anything
Not asking for
additional.
anything else on town meeting floor, not needing a 2/3 vote, which
That
I
looks
think
promising.
is a silver lining. And there's some really difficult things in this budget and some really difficult decisions that we had to make, and it's not the budget that any of us necessarily, but I also think, like, there's some progress that has been made through this process, and I don't want to lose sight of that. And I know May 9th is still a month away, so there's still some things that could happen, but ultimately, I think if we can go to town meeting floor, and this is what's on the article, and it's majority vote, not having to ask, and get into that argument on town meeting floor. And then the other, Jen knows this, and I think the committee knows this, there are going to be unanticipated costs, and I think we learned from the town through this process that we're better off going to them for those unanticipated costs. I think we have tried with but maybe to our detriment, to absorb costs, and I think it's difficult to really quantify what the impact of that may have been, but, you know, when we're saying we're gonna absorb this cost, it's an extra $50,000 that we found, and then our budget the next year is up by $50,000. The question is, like, well, where did this come from? Oh, we absorbed it last year, and I think to Jen's point, like, that's where some of those questions start to come in, and,
They think it's a massive increase, but really it's just been us, you know, self-funding, and then we end up short. So I think, I do think that that's gonna be, and they seemed pretty responsive to that when we mentioned that, like, you know, it helps them too to know, like, hey, if we're spending money above what we had allocated for our boilers, and we're trying to fix that, that doesn't help them realize how bad the situation actually is. You know, if we have to do you know, it all perpetuates itself, I think, to becoming its own self-fulfilling prophecy. If we keep thinking that we can fund it, then they keep thinking that that's where we get that, you know, we're hiding money. We have all these secret pockets of money because we just find creative ways to do it. So, you know, I know that there will be unanticipated expenses, and if we have to go to town floor or a special town meeting every couple of months, then those questions about why our budget changes go away. And hopefully there won't be that many, but we don't know because they're unanticipated,
Right.
right? So,
and again, I think, like, that's why I'm emphasizing that our budget is built on projections and what we know in April. And if we've learned anything the past few years, what we know in April and what we know in August could be two very different things. And in some ways, that might benefit us, and in other times, it could really hurt us. But, you know, that's the position we're in when the budget is built with a snapshot from October 1st, the year prior, costs are going up, that, like, you know, there's just so many variables to it. I think that is important to note, that so much could change. Unexpected retirement, a student with a one-to-one no longer needs the one-to-one. A student that doesn't have a one-to-one does need the one-to-one. Like, these things happen daily.
so, are there any other questions or any other thoughts? Otherwise, I think we're probably ready to make the motion to vote on, the budget. But I don't want to cut questions short.
I apologize, clearly I was late, I had a big error on my part, but I did speak with Adam today, and I had plenty of time to look this over, and I feel very comfortable with it. But, I mean, as comfortable as we can be, given the situation.
I mean, the same way, I feel like be as positive as we can, like, I do feel like some of the stress of having the budget pass on town floor is gone, which is something unusual.
Yeah, again, I agree with, I also want to put, like,
It does still need to pass.
it needs to pass. We found out this information Friday afternoon. We needed to have this budget available by Friday at 5:30 because the public hearing was tonight. So, like, information came in late. I own part of that, certainly, but, and what proceed with the guidelines that we were given at that time. So quickly and, Friday to make sure that we could get to that number that the town asked us to get to and, some creativity. So I don't know what could change, but
Well, let's not phrase it like that,
Right.
because that'll be,
Yeah.
be the death of us.
But I do appreciate the creativity and obvious collaboration that went into all of this with all of you guys on the admin team, because to me, obviously, no cuts are ideal, but I don't see anything jumping out that clearly, like, student impacts are not gonna go, out nothing crazy is happening where we're cutting sports, like, that's always been the thing that the town said, you're gonna cut sports or cut music, so I do appreciate the thoroughness, and Sue being able to come in and say, we've got grants though to make up for this here and there is definitely comforting to see. There's nothing too,
My favorite part is the font gets to be large enough to read, so one of the ones we had with Emery, it was like so many on the
Yeah.
slide that you can barely,
I think that would have been the key. If we included everything in that 705, it would have been.
right.
that
No, these
tight,
were
but-
not even wants, these were just like, this is,
Yes,
this all
yes.
needs to go, so, all right, so I will take a motion, that's the word, to approve the fiscal '23 budget.
I will make a motion to approve the fiscal '23 budget.
I might just clarify that it's this total
Yeah.
school operating budget, that number specific.
You have to read it out.
Oh, boy, I need to read numbers, okay. Now I'm gonna zoom in my font for a minute. Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion to approve the total budget of $9,128,912 for fiscal year.
Second? Any last minute discussion, questions, anything further before we vote? Audrey, you sure you're good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Jill? Jen?
Yes, I'm good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you for all of the hard work, because it doesn't go unnoticed for sure. Okay, do we need to adjourn that public hearing and call to order the new meeting? Want to just do it anyway?
Sure.
Can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The time is 6:55 PM, and now we will call to order our regular scheduled school committee meeting. First up is our consent agenda. Have a few minutes.
There's a few.
Oops. What happened here? Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here. So first, our minutes from March 8th.
What's the first one? There's March 8th, March 22nd.
March 8th, March 22nd, and March 23rd are the ones that we're looking at.
Not the joint.
But I think the joint is the
The 23rd.
23rd.
Isn't there?
It's on the bottom in mine. I just. All right. Anything, any adjustments or anything for the meeting minutes from the 8th? Not, I'll take a motion to approve minutes from March 8th.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
I'm just going to abstain.
Okay. Here, right?
Right.
Perfect. That's fair. Next is minutes from March 22nd. Any adjustments, comments, corrections?
The motion to approve the minutes for March 22nd.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Approved unanimously. And then the last one is the minutes from the joint meeting on the 23rd.
You make the motion to approve the joint meeting minutes for March 23rd.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next is warrants. There's 3 of them, 57, 60, and 62, which I have here for signature. I just haven't done it yet. All those in, oh, no, not all those in favor. Any comments or questions? I'll take a motion. Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, next are visitors' comments. Any citizen wishing to speak before the committee must sign in with the administrative assistant prior to the opening of the regular session of the school committee. The visitor will identify themselves by name and address and shall speak for no longer than 3 minutes. For anyone who is unable to sign in ahead of time, we ask that you clearly state your name and address so that this information can be included in the record for the meeting. Do we have any attendees? Okay, all right then. I guess we'll just move right along. Unless Stacy has any comments. Student representative, I thought I saw Marcus walk by, but maybe it was not him. No. And Cheryl's not here. Okay. New business, program of studies. Join us.
Yeah, both, there's 2 seats, both of you guys can come up.
You're nice and close to the microphone, remember?
Yeah.
Everyone. Thanks for having us in person. We'll share the program of studies with you. It's been in progress since probably September. We are in the final stages of edit. The guidance department, in addition to myself and Mr. Dorman, Tammy, Justin, and guidance have put a significant amount of work. We're still the 2 guidance counselors. It's been a learning process for Todd and myself, especially being new in the roles. So it's been really nice, and especially with Sue coming on too. So we have had a collaborative approach to the program of studies this year, and I felt it was important to share that with you. It is not required for a vote, but I wanted you to see the work that goes into updating the program of studies. Yes, there are some formatting things from copying and pasting from old ones, converting it into a Google Doc that is quite troublesome that we cannot for the life of us figure out how to get rid of, but we'll do that over the summer and try to fix that. It might obviously be making a copy of and then switching it all over again, but there's a lot of charts that are embedded into it that we'll need to make sure that we can remove, that will likely solve some of the formatting. There's some new courses in here, there's some courses that we're taking out of here, and so we're at a place where we felt it was important to share. Jackie uploaded it to the website this week, and we dropped it into the Plus Portal accounts for the students a couple days ago. So they have that, I believe I set it where it pops up under files or links for them to access. As you know, our students have gone through the selection process for their classes, so they can use this document to refer back to at any time, because it will live in their portal account. It's quite extensive if you look through it, but it's nice for families and students to have.
Please repeat where it's located on the website,
Yes,
because I love navigating that website.
It's
As you
under-
know, it's my favorite.
yes, I can definitely share that with you. It's under guidance.
It's under guidance?
I haven't checked myself, but it's under guidance. The website is quite challenging, but we're getting there.
Okay, I
Yes.
know, yes.
We like links.
Hmm.
Links are easy to figure out, but it's on there. I'll look right now.
I just am hoping that anybody that does tune in and is kind of interested in this piece can access it, so.
Yeah, I know there's a digital backpack, but that can be quite cumbersome at times. It's not on the page. We don't know how to shrink that either. So it should be under guidance if you go under the Granby Junior Senior High School, but
Thank you.
any questions about it?
It's quite extensive.
It is, you trust, yeah, it's a Sunday morning read. So thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to email.
Thank you for
Are
working
there
on this.
any, I guess, since you're here, that you wanted to put in course off?
Well,
That
super
you wanna
cool.
promote?
Yeah, I feel like we've been talking about cybersecurity for quite some time as a new course. We have a lot of signups, really awesome. So it's a new course that we're anticipating having, you know, a new computer science pathway on the horizon. So this is a start in that direction. So we're really excited for that. Other courses, you know, we do have an option for BHS AP courses. Obviously, it's not too virtual high school. We have a pilot program with the new AP STEM expansion, so they offer some classes. So we already offer some of them, for example, like AP Calc. So the purpose of offering these is not to replace the classroom teacher. So if we offer AP Calc, kids can obviously sign up for that. But if it doesn't necessarily fit in their schedule, they have an option to sign up for this free AP course, where they have 1 day a week. They have a teacher, a licensed teacher, but a lot of the work is done independently. So it's another program that we have. We talk about like the HCC classes, our dual enrollment program. So a lot of the cool programming that we have been able to offer in the past couple years, we're offering, and a lot of students are signing up. So really nice to have that. We'll continue to offer our Project Lead the Way courses, which is awesome. We were awarded a $1,000 grant this year, which is really cool. That was for the cybersecurity. Mr. Kearns has signed up for that this year. Sure, I'm missing a whole lot of other cool stuff, but it's all in there.
Medical
Yes, that was part of, thank you, Alex. That was part of the medical, Project Lead the Way Medical Detectives. So that will be offered next year. Some of the Project Lead the Way classes, if we don't offer necessarily the full class, we offer portion of the class, like some of the units embedded into our current. Automation robotics, it's design and mod. So those are really for our students to be taking.
And those are all
Broken down into Project Lead the Way Launch or Project Lead the Way Gateway. Oh, and it's the gateway's here, right?
Gateway
Here,
Middle
sorry.
School launches
Yes,
K to 5.
thank you. Here as in there, but you know what I mean. Trying to think of, we're offering physics honors next year. Mr. Graney will be slated for that course. And with the idea that after Mr. Graney, he's been teaching 2 sections of Intro to Physics this year, which he's done an amazing job. I've observed that class multiple differential learning going on in that class, and it's really cool to see. So the next step for Mr. Graney would be taking the physics honors, and then working towards physics again. So it's a very challenging course, but the kids are doing an incredible job because they have the option as 9th graders to take biology or the intro to physics now. We're starting to see a lot of students sign up for it, which is really cool. Grade and beyond and all the different options. Getting out your child's entire school career. So, I think it's a great. Kudos to the guidance department for doing a lot of that. They've been updating it. It gets updated every couple years, but there's things there that if we can drop that in there and make that change, because there are some things, but for the most part, the questions that the parents have are, what is my 9th grader going to be taking? That's one of the first things they want to know. What do they need in order to graduate? And the senior parents are asking that same question. The last month of school, what do they need in order to graduate? So it really encompasses all. If it can't be answered in there, then we would encourage parents, to be able to pick up the phone or email, guidance to answer that. So we've dropped it into the RAM report. It will likely live in there permanently, kind of like the school hours and the school calendar. And, we dropped it in there too for the parents of 6th graders coming in. So they have their own new section on this RAM report. And I don't know if they look at it, but I'm sure that if, we tried to make a point to say, welcome class of 2028, FYI, this is the RAM report. Look at this because you have your own section on here, and those will hopefully get ahead of some of the questions that they may have with those students transitioning from here over to the high school.
The one that's online is not the one that's shared in the folder. Mine's not touchscreen, so don't touch. But
But we'll fix
that's
it.
not the one. I just
There
wanted
it
to let you
is.
know.
It's right there. You're on the wrong page.
No, this is the one you shared with us,
Oh.
and this is the one that's on the website.
Well, and I find the website is tricky though, because sometimes you'll find things in multiple spots too, where you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
So,
I'm just keeping
like,
you all on your
I
toes.
know.
That's all.
So,
We'll fix
but
it.
thank you for noticing.
We'll fix it as
Yeah.
we're over here.
That 6th grade piece that you're doing now in the RAM report, I think that might be nice to maybe link on to the East Meadow update so
was
that
thinking it, but I was
parents
like, don't do
know,
it.
because I would have had no clue to think of checking the RAM report if I only had East Meadow students. So maybe
Are you sending it to
Paperley.
the
I'm
6th grade?
sending
too?
it to the 6th grade families.
Oh,
They're
perf-
considered,
oh,
they're
perfect.
6.5 in the system. Stacy did that a couple weeks back. We had to create it because they can't technically live, they have to live in one place, so they're
Right.
6.5. Technically, they're. We
Perfect.
do,
But who's
we do
counting?
send it
Okay.
to the families as
All right,
well.
Good.
awesome. Thank you.
That was excellent. It's nice. That's really great. Okay. Disposal of obsolete materials.
So. Willing to come up if need be, but if you click in your that lists the materials, and we require a vote to dispose.
21 book.
I know.
Pretty good.
There's 23 of them.
Whatever is found. I love that.
All colors, whatever is found, no need for them. I love it.
Some pictures of the Rangers and stuff like that.
Art catalogs, like from the library?
Yes.
Because we wouldn't have gotten rid of them when we did the library. Let's just bring them up to the old home
So
ec room.
I don't know where it started, but there seems to be some hoarder mentality in some
You know, those
places.
are coming in style.
Some places.
It's like reminds
Some
me of
of
my
it can
junk
come
drawer.
back.
Yeah.
Probably some.
Some of them have been used as furniture rather than
See?
their original intended purpose. As we moved to a digital card catalog, they were used as tables. They are for COVID spacing.
A lot of this material was, when we first started coming back from COVID, if you'll recall, certain amount of feet in the front of the space for the teachers, so bookshelves, extra tables, extra file cabinet, like the rooms all went basically into 2 rooms, and then last year, the 2 rooms went to 1 room, and this 1 room, we basically allowed teachers for the first half of this year to start getting the materials that they're going to use and identify the things that are no longer of use.
I just want to know, did you look through them and see if you signed in on any of them?
No. I did find a classmate for one of the books that she got in my office. One of our student interns' mother's book that I graduated with high school.
Oh, I know who that is then.
I
No?
know it would have been in that stack, but
It's like going down some weird rabbit hole. I think the economics class with Mr. O then, probably, right?
it was.
Oh, that's funny. My name might be in one of those books. All right, so we need a vote. Can I have a vote? I mean, a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the disposal of obsolete materials.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm getting feedback.
I don't know why all of a sudden just hearing that. It
I'm
was
getting
me.
texted. It's not great either. It's going in and out. I don't know, I was just trying to mess with the mics.
Okay, next is a facilities assessment.
Yes. Just put this in the folder. Budget, so I just put it in the folder. I apologize, but this is last month or so, and it's kind of, or at the high school.
Is there a chance that we can share this? Is it important for like it to be seen that these are things that need maintenance?
That's our plan.
Thoughts?
Yeah,
Okay.
so the plan is that, once finalized, and at the last meeting, Jen made a good point of not just focusing on the junior, senior high school, but including things here. So our original intent, our original focus was next door, so the information in it right now is really junior, senior high school specific. I feel like we might not be there yet, but once we have some feedback, share that out, and then add an East Meadow section, and then share that out once we've had some time to look through it and add things. But yeah, to your point, Audrey, our goal is to say, select board, finance committee, school committee, we all have this document, because the only thing that's gonna change are things are gonna get added to that, or things are gonna get addressed and come off of it. So we felt by having something like this means that there's not these questions about, oh, the parking lot's okay, or this is okay. We tried to get a pretty good summarization of all of our needs in the building. We want to have other sets of eyes on it too, because we might not have thought of everything. We did use the
Yes, and
statement
I
of
figured we
interest.
would be sharing it, but I meant if we're gonna be discussing any particular item, sharing even on the screen.
Oh,
It's like when you're watching
sorry.
and you can hear everybody talking about it, but sometimes it's nice to read along, sorry.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Could have cut me short.
So while Steve's doing that, what we tried to do, and we can talk a little more in depth, this RAM report, and a program of studies, if you want.
Even if it's just like the
A little more.
headliners, I feel like it's important to kind of see.
Yeah, so what we
things.
try to do is kind of hit the most important things next door. So you'll see HVAC, boilers, electrical, building security, the parking lot, athletic grounds, and then the impact on, what these that, although our goal here was to kind of document what we're faced with next door and let it help us guide decisions that we're making, some conversations, future capital. If town, because we spent $25,000 more one year on discussed it, this shouldn't be a surprise. So this document will serve many purposes, but mostly kind of getting this information out there and shared with everybody townwide. Tried our best to capture as much information as we could, brief and not too long. And I think we did a good job of that, but obviously as we go through it, there's feedback. Add some things or take things off of it.
Because like what Jen was saying too, like I think in maintenance, I'm sure has a list of things that they know that needs to be handled, whether
yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
painting or,
Yeah.
little things here and there. But it's been historically that we allow things almost get too bad before we handle anything,
Yeah, again,
or
the-
seemingly handle anything.
Yeah, the goal of this, like we wouldn't of the school.
Bigger budget items, if you will.
Particularly next door, and then we'll eventually. Came from the SOI that we wrote last year. We used pretty much the same one this year. The SOIs that were written in the past. Several years that we're still using that information, and those things are still have not been addressed.
I'm just going to clarify too, because sometimes when we start talking in our terms
Yes.
that we know, statement
Yes.
of interest.
So the
that
SOI
was our-
statement of interest
sorry.
that we submitted last year and are hopeful.
Yes.
So one thing, like, I don't see okay, all right, so HVAC and boilers, I was thinking cafeteria and the gym would be, like their own separate sort of thing, but, I don't know if this is the right time to ask it, but like what we had talked about when we were at the capital expenditures meeting is all of our items are getting to be such big ticket items that it starts to trigger those rules.
ADA requirements.
Right. What, do we have a list of what that is? Like, what is it that we're lacking to make, like, do you know what I'm trying to ask?
We're not lacking anything. As soon as we start construction projects at a certain amount, we're gonna need to be brought up. What those are,
Okay.
yeah.
Is there
I
a place
don't
that we
know.
can go and, like, that I can go and look at to see, like, because I'm always talking about that when when we're doing those things, so it's sort of like this nebulous thing for me. What if,
But and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the construction done in a 3-year period.
Correct.
Correct? So a year drops off, and then you've got, so like, that's where
But
like
we
the
just
roof
spent-
is not accounted for anymore in that 3-year, so it gives us the numbers kind of always changing every
roof
year.
isn't 3 years, though, we just spent 1.4.
2019.
It was
so
19, so
yeah,
it's
three
just,
years
yeah.
So when you think about it.
This
by the time
summer,
we-
by August of 2019 was the
Right.
completion.
But your question is still, no matter what,
As Chris
when
was
we
saying,
hit that threshold, what
it
are
was
we
gonna be in there.
obligated to update in the building to become compliant? I don't know. I think that list grows as you do more work and the amount goes. I don't know.
Okay.
I can certainly find that out, but I don't.
You know, and he identified the big items. He wasn't sure exactly what it would be, but he said like the new exterior doors, the elevator, things like that are already bringing you closer to compliance with those big tickets, but there could be certainly other things too.
Not for sure that we didn't finish until 2020.
Yeah, it was the summer before, and some of the touch-up work might have gone into the fall, but it was, yeah, 2019.
Of the building, which, sure changes every year, so,
'Cause it's
So, and again, if hopefully we start tackling some of these things, we can get our definitive answers and we'll.
Okay. Anything else on this?
This doesn't need a vote.
Just informational?
Yeah, it's just informational.
And isn't your only chance to look at it, like, if you want to please give us feedback, to your point, if it makes sense to separate the gym, something like that, we could do it. We have the gym already broken up, 3 phases that we've done.
That's what I was thinking, is that we had the
Yeah.
cafeteria and then the gym in 3 phases. I think just for continuity, when we're talking about that, especially if we want to share it with other people, it would be helpful to have the gym be, the locker rooms, the floor, and I forget what the other thing was. But the 3 phases, just so it's,
The only thing that pops into my mind as I look at it is I almost want it to have like a creation date, which must exist on the
I can
file.
put that on the bottom.
Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
can put
Just
it on
so
the
like
bottom.
it's, we know what year it's taglined with.
Like the document was created?
Correct.
Yep.
Like I know it says like things to be done in 22, so we could assume that it was created in, but
Yep.
just sort of a.
Plus projects is obviously not responsible, but over the last few years, that's been the only time the conversation. We're always looking at it, we're always keeping, everybody up to date. Or the time when the conversation gets started again, that we're doing this.
all right. Are we good? Any other questions? All right, next is regionalization survey responses. We can probably share, can we share that too, or probably not, because there's emails on there? But they're all public emails, right? I mean, you just find this one.
Yeah.
I
wouldn't.
share it.
Maybe not, all right,
It's in a PDF.
never mind, I think it's fine.
My only question is the people that reached out back to us were members of their schools or member of their school committees?
So my understanding is all but one were members of school. Their superintendent who responded. If you look at like Ludlow, they responded interested in regionalizing with the town of Granby, but then the response was not sure interested is exactly correct, but certainly open to a conversation. Unfortunately, I'm finishing up my term and will be off the committee March 28th. So best to follow up in a few weeks once new members are seated. So it doesn't seem like Ludlow brought this to a committee meeting, where Amherst, I know, brought it to a committee meeting. Hadley superintendent reached out. It's on their April agenda. So like Ludlow, it doesn't appear that it was a committee vote. It was just individual committee members responded. And based on those 2 individuals, they both responded potentially interested and really interested in having a discussion and learning more. Not interested at this time, but brought up the idea of potentially sharing services. So I think that's certainly something we could and should be looking into. Not interested, as did Amherst. And like I said, I did hear from the Hadley superintendent, it's on their April agenda.
Was Hadley the only other district that we reached out to that isn't?
Belchertown, South Hadley,
I think it would be nice to have this with,
Like a no response.
with
like, all-
everybody,
yeah.
right, like with a no response or, discussing at such and such a date. That way, we can kind of keep track of his.
had those no responses, I can share it with this committee, finance committee, and select board, or what is your preference that gets done with it now?
I think if we fill it in, I think it's fine to share it along, I think,
My question would be, when we share it with finance committee, do they want to have a discussion behind it? Or is it just sharing the document?
I think they want a third-party review.
they want to spend a bunch of.
They don't want us looking into this. They would like a third-party review of educational options for students in Granby, is my
We're
understanding.
going to fund that? Or they are recommending the town funds that?
Yeah.
Interesting.
One of them was, they talked about it in terms of a feasibility study. So that's why we, at one of our meetings, decided that we were going to go ahead and do the interest survey, because I stand behind what we said. I'm not willing to start talking about throwing around several $100,000 for a feasibility study for something when there's no interest, and that's based on the information that we got from the Collins Center, right?
So Collins Center essentially said that that study is something that they could do, but can't do it generally speaking. So Granby partnering with Belchertown would look different than Granby partnering with Amherst versus South Hadley. So they said you would first need to know if there's anyone else is open to partnership. And if I recall, that's why we had sent out the letter to say, is there any interest? And then we can share that information and they can do with it what they want. And they might decide to send out their own survey, or maybe they find another firm. I don't know.
I mean, I'm glad we're certainly speaking about this openly here, but for me, I would rather follow up with Ludlow first, because I feel like just one person saying, yes, they're interested, doesn't mean that Ludlow is actually interested. Do you know what I mean? So I would love to probably follow up with Ludlow first, find a little bit more information from them, and then share
Well,
out once we hear.
Yeah, we're the ones that, and like, I think, it is on us to do that, because we're the ones reaching out to them, so,
Right.
so we'll have to do that, but I don't know that is their committee all reseated then? If their terms just
Looks like
ended,
that
they
adjourned,
are?
But we can look into it.
So I know that they're having their own, battle right now. I have a friend that's there, and my cousin lives there, so I'm not surprised that they're feeling like, oh, yeah, let's see, let's see what else we can do. They have a pretty large deficit, from what I understand, so. So, yeah, I think once we do that, we could always reach out to try to have another joint committee meeting with them and, present the results to them and try to narrow down the conversation a little bit more.
I just would like to have more information. Like I said, what town did you say that they actually discussed it at their school committee meeting?
Amherst.
Like, I feel
No,
like
I know
that,
Amherst did.
that makes sense, versus one person being like, yeah, but the rest of your committee might be like, oh, no. So I think to pursue it further rather than giving it almost as a false hope potentially. I mean, they could be more people interested.
Because Jill has no privacy.
Wait, it's gonna be on camera. Shame. Right now.
Oh, my
That was
goodness.
from last night.
I took that.
She's like, want to see a picture? I'm like, yes, but are you okay?
Okay, enrollment dashboard. How, everyone to see the number 721? That doesn't count for anything for us.
Largest enrollment since we started this dashboard, higher than last June. Yeah, we had 6 in this year, 1 for service only.
So what? Just services only.
So
Like, I understand what services are, but they're not a resident then? Or
they're a
they-
resident.
They are a
They
resident,
are a resident.
but they are not, are they in
attending
a placement?
full-time. No, so they might just be receiving,
Are they homeschooled? Like,
Could
where,
be.
where,
Could
where,
be.
where do
Could
they
be,
go?
They could be homeschooled, they could be at parochial school, private school, but receiving services that were required to
through
provide.
us.
Yeah.
Why don't they get them where they're at?
Because the public schools have to provide those to those entities.
Not all those entities have to provide it.
To claim them as a student though, right? Obviously, that's why they're, or
Yes.
how does that work? That's like when I
They're
think about our
residents.
But for
October numbers.
pre-K, you get like
Right.
half.
I think I ask this every single time, but is the resident, non-resident tuition enrollment, that's the constant though? That's not new for this month, correct?
No one else acknowledged it.
Sorry.
I was having a side conversation.
I think it's just our, that's how we get to that
Is that the
721.
constant?
No,
Is my
because it has
question?
721 at the bottom, so that's, I don't know where they are.
Which one are you looking at?
I'm looking at the resident, non-resident tuition enrolled, and it has 1 and 7, 1 and 12. Is that a constant figure, or is that new for this month? I feel like I've asked this before, and clearly it's not working.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it has to update to account for the difference between last month was 714 and now it's 721. So it can't be a constant, like it updates whatever numbers.
No, I think what she means though is like, is it a new tuition student in grade 7?
Oh,
For-
it's a constant.
No, the
no.
tuition students have remained constant.
Okay.
But because they're all residents, they would be reflected in the resident column.
Tuition can only be resident.
Tuition, non-resident. So the tuition is.
I
that
thought this
hasn't
is like
moved.
tuitioned out. Is it
No, they're tuitioned in.
In, okay,
That's coming in.
all right.
Thank you.
Bye,
Correct.
guys.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay. Great.
and these school choice seats are, seats
Current school
remaining
year.
are current school year, so we don't have the graph yet for what.
We
So
voted on that.
what we
Open
voted on,
seats.
well, we have, all of those seats are open because that's for enrollment. So maybe we need to add a tab now going forward with what seats, because we wanted to, I thought we wanted to revisit that, to look at them if we, wanted to adjust any, right? Do I have that, yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm just noticing though, this says school choice seats 21, 22, so she would have to add probably a whole nother box for 22, 23.
Yeah.
Correct. The problem with that is we're not gonna know that until we have the lottery, which will be late June. So all we're taking right now is taking in applications.
Right.
So those numbers won't change.
Oh, I thought, okay, then we don't need to do anything with it until June. That's fine.
I think,
I thought people were accepted before then.
Current ones.
Well, they're not even part of this because they're all right.
No.
Okay. I feel like people feel like they know, but maybe I'm not, maybe I'm talking to people that feel like that have been
If
here all
people are
along.
currently school choice, they would know that, yes, they can continue, but that wouldn't take up an open seat for next year.
Okay. Any other questions on this? We don't need to talk about school choice like we just talked about. Superintendent's report.
Remind people that we are off on Friday and then off next week. So April break begins this Friday through Monday, April 25th. The offices are going to have some more limited availability this week. There's quite a few vacations, so I would strongly suggest that people reach out, contact if it's main office, East Meadow, junior, senior high school, just try to connect with someone maybe this week or call before you come, just to make sure that you'll have someone. But there's a lot of vacations to work around, and I want to make sure that the staff who can take those vacations also have that time, so it is a difficult balance. Want to congratulate, and I like this routine that I feel like we've been on. I'd like to make it an occurrence every meeting. I'd like to congratulate Cindy Dorman for playing a key role in securing a $16,000 our science department. This grant will pay for all teacher training, supplies, and materials for implementing Open SciEd in grades 7 and 8. The goal of Open SciEd is to give teachers the material, support, and power to get kids excited and curious about the world around them and confident in their ability to figure it out through questioning, investigating, and solving problems. And we can certainly get more information out there to people, but wanted to recognize them. And that's a $16,000 over 3-year grant that we just found out about last week. Provide a brief update. I know the East Meadow families know this because I've been sending out information. We are hosting the East Meadow principal search this week. Special thanks to the search committee for the time they spent reviewing applicants, interviewing. By 3 finalists. One was in yesterday, another in today, another one scheduled tomorrow. We do have a link that was sent out on Friday that any families can join at 4 o'clock tomorrow. I know some people have asked about recording. They are not available. I just felt like that was a little bit much to ask of the candidates, so I've had a couple of questions on that, but and then anybody who's participated will be sending out a Google form so that they can provide me with input and feedback as we get closer to making that decision. And that's all that I.
All right, Adam?
I got one thing.
Lightning strike?
Yep.
See you smile.
John. Pop some cameras out, so there's still some work to be done. Full disclosure, we have a 10,000. We have some type of update.
Imagine if this was like a legitimate, like really bad.
Well, I mean,
one.
it really is, though.
No, but I mean, like, it was so, yeah, like so minor of a one that we did, like,
Yep.
I-
We're trying, John's trying, we're trying.
oh, it's not,
I do have a question, though. So, because we're not paying the invoice because we need everything to submit to the insurance, do we have to,
We've made an insurance claim
Okay.
already. All the work from other vendors, and even them, some of the work that they had done and completed, we've submitted that claim to, the town's received the check yet, I'm assuming.
my concern too is how much was under warranty or was anything under warranty, that we don't want to like extend past a certain point.
I
You're
don't
like,
believe
"Oh, sorry."
anything was under warranty. It
Okay.
was- Yeah, we're
I'm not gonna go down this right now, but, to still follow up on the warranty, because we have the lightning protection and it didn't work. So I thought that that does alter a potential
So I'm gonna
claim
be
and
careful
warranty.
to say, I don't know if it didn't work, it might have worked there, so I don't know, I
Okay.
don't know.
It wasn't, we don't think it was a direct strike to the building, we think it was from a pole.
Yeah,
So
right,
it-
indirect.
So it was
Right.
like backfed sort of probably, rather than hitting the building.
Right.
To be honest, so, and I can follow up with John because it's been a while, I think the lightning protection did its job, but then when the school,
Okay,
so, but I can clarify.
that would make
Thinking back,
sense.
that's what happened. We were protected,
Mhm.
everything tried to kick when
Gotcha, okay.
problems were caused.
Thank you for that.
But still, I think we're past the warranty
Okay.
dates anyway.
And my only other thing is, as, you sent out that note about possible free lunch going through.
Yes, that's just going through legislation right now.
Do we know when it's on the docket? No,
No.
okay. I didn't read, I'll be honest, I didn't read the
Yeah.
article, I just was looking for your headline, so.
I mean, I'm surprised it took. Get it? And to be honest, my personal opinion, now that it's there, I'd be surprised if it doesn't get passed.
Right.
Meaning, we'd have another year, that's
I
just
think
my
it-
personal opinion.
A lot of families and a lot of districts are feeling the same thing, like,
Depending on it too.
Yeah.
you know, like,
Yeah.
like, once you provide that food security for families, I mean.
For
just-
3 years almost.
Right.
I mean, we're seeing it here, and, you know, our town was up 11% increase, right? So
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what it would be like in some other towns that don't look quite like us, you know, as far as, you know, we don't have any city or, you know, anything like that, so. Is that, anybody else have any other questions? All right, you're up.
I do.
Oh,
Only-
sorry.
No, but I don't know if it fits into asking you a question or for a future meeting, so I think you go first and then.
Well, no, if it's part of the facilities, asking how, okay.
So CES met on March 30th. There was a review of different policies that they were updating, including the video comment, vacation harassment policies, things like that. They also went through their financial reports, talked about their budget presentation that will be in May, their tuition rates that were obviously going up, much like everything. And then also went through the evaluation process of the executive director. And majority of the meeting.
All right, Audrey?
Just kind of brought back to the discussion about potential with summer school activities that we had talked about a couple weeks ago. I didn't know if there was anything that was potentially still happening with that, as some summer camps are already starting to hustle and bustle of opening.
Yes, so we just posted the position late last week.
Okay,
So like I said, last time, I think we're a little bit behind, but our plan is to still offer something, some options in the month of July.
Okay.
So logistics, we're still working out. I hope to have an update on the 26th, but again, with the vacation and stuff,
just like a
it's,
teaser that something could, like a, you know, something, I guess, for
Yes.
people that might be interested or considering,
Yep.
you know, as they're starting to open up already and take in applicants at a lot of the summer school places. And I have one other that kind of came up last week. Did the kids, I think, had a half a day for professional development, so I don't know if I need to bring it up to be put on agenda or for discussion about the calendar, and I know we already voted on it, I'm not looking to change it, but or if I should talk separately, I'm not sure what the best
Well,
avenue is.
just say it in
So
one
we
sentence.
had a half day.
Yeah.
The day before my kids, as a fifth graders, MCAS. And like in my head, I was like, why are we having a half day? Like it just, I guess it's, what can you do when it's the month of April or whatever? And we had, I don't know. So like it was just one of those things that never occurred to me when we were going over the calendar, but then like logistically, I mean, the month of March and April is MCAS month. Everyone's getting attacked. But then at the same time, like I think of like what you want as consistency and a much normal routine as possible during those things. And it's in next year's calendar as well, on a Wednesday next year. This year it was on a Tuesday. So then it started to like, well, not that we want to bring up next year's calendar, but like if it was on a Friday or I don't know, like at the end of the week versus being in the
And then
middle of the
even-
week.
I think scheduling MCAS too could also be altered, right? Because
Right.
like you said, it's basically the month of March
Correct.
and April, so
Yeah.
we could maybe look a little bit closer.
But even
that
having those
way,
like
too.
half days on, would it be better to do them on a Friday versus middle of the week for professional developments? Or like, we tend to do them on like before vacation even with ours, so that families that want to get a jump start on their vacation, it's a half day before the school break. I don't know. It hadn't even thought into my mind until it was like,
And
All
see, I
right,
took
let's-
it the other,
like-
the other way, I was like, oh, this is, because it's been happening for a while, I know it's happened to Meredith before, and
Yeah.
she was like, this is great, I can come home, I don't have to think about it, I get to relax, and then I feel good to go back to take my MCAS the next
yeah,
day.
mine was edged up.
So, I mean, I don't know that would make everyone happy all the time, so. But certainly something that we can look at for the next time.
Yeah.
We do, because we've already done the calendar for,
Absolutely, and like
Next
I
year.
said, I'm not, but it was something that kind of popped in my mind, and I was like, not knowing when the dates were then.
Yeah, but maybe
So-
looking at the calendar and how those half days fall. So if we can't move the half days, maybe we
And
look
there
at how
might
we offer
possibly
them.
even be, I don't remember now, and I looked at it in April too, because there's usually a professional development once a month, correct? About-
Not every, but 6 months we have a half day.
Yeah. That was it.
any other discussion? So we don't really have anything new that we came up with that we want to make sure gets on the agenda for,
Sorry. Our next meeting is, are we also having subcommittee meetings, our next meeting, or?
should be,
right?
yeah.
Okay, because I don't know if we need to discuss which groups are meeting.
Oh, we probably should, that's what we're
Sorry, gearing towards.
getting ready to go towards, so.
Because there's more to do, so.
So, I'm hearing a vote for policy.
Yes, please.
I feel like, budget, I don't know, I mean, we could probably try to get a separate one, because, I mean, I know there's not, do you want to have one?
Could work on that flyer.
Yeah, we just put one on there. That's
Okay,
fine.
so policy and, budget.
We were thinking that a note that we provided at town meeting last year, having something.
Yeah.
So might be a good opportunity.
I know that you and I had like community relations that we haven't really been able to do because budget's been taking such a front seat. I don't know if you're comfortable with it. I'd be okay to reach out to Glenn and see if him and I want to meet quick so that we can get something together before town meeting.
Right, well,
During-
it'll almost be, if we're working on the flyer, that is something that would be part of that, so maybe.
Okay, so maybe-
You, and see if we can get him to come in and we can work on it as both
Perfect.
committees for, the flyer and, just to make sure that we get the word out for people to get there for town meeting, because I think that that's one of those things where, it's May 9th, which is a Monday, right? So it's gonna be in the evening. I can tell you.
There's a second date too that they put up.
Or, what day is May 23rd?
Monday.
It's a Monday.
Isn't that the holiday?
No, it's the 30th. It's the holiday.
Before.
Yes.
Let's see how many games there are on Monday, May 9th. There's baseball.
Do you want that to be community relations and not
I think both, just put community relations / budget and they'll meet together, because we want to do the, want to work on the flyer and we can talk about how, getting the word out for both is what I was thinking. I don't know.
Where did we hear about the 23rd?
That was submitted.
Not hearing, I guess.
Be the 9th? It might be the 23rd.
It'll be both.
The 9th.
They usually
If
sometimes have
it's
two
split,
meetings. They split the warrants, they must have a bunch.
Well, didn't they not get through bylaw last time, so maybe they're doing a.
That committee,
No, I think that all got shut down.
that committee disbanded after they didn't go, because they had been meeting for like 18 months on that, and for all of that work to go for nothing.
Okay, well, we don't
That's
need to
neither
have
here
that.
nor-
I was
that's-
just curious if there
yeah.
was, so they're gonna try to maybe break it up.
They always do. There's the first budget, and they don't even always get into, like any school budget. School budget is always the secondary. It has always been the secondary one. Like transportation might be on the first one. It depends upon how they divvy up the articles, so those have to be posted. But either way, we need to hand out some stuff.
Well, nothing, I'm good.
I don't believe you.
No, I'm good. Because when I created that, dates to, whatever I called it, I don't remember.
Mark your calendar.
Flyer, Mark your calendar, that's it. I definitely had to do some searching, and ended up finding that the town clerk sends out a reminder. That's where I think I pulled the date from.
Well, they wouldn't be able to even put out the next date if they just put in a request just now. So we're getting I think maybe a little ahead of ourselves. So definitely the 9th, and then we'll be continued, and if they formally add the other date, then we'll
Right.
update our.
Yeah, but I
things
don't,
as well.
I didn't even find anything on the website that time either, so. I had to, like I
Not
said,
even May 9th? No.
No, I had to,
Do we have a building use for May 9th?
Yes.
And that's the date they've all been referring to, so. Anything else? Otherwise, we can vote to get into executive session.
no, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. We're now going to vote to enter into executive session under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Part A3, to discuss strategy with regard to collective bargaining, as doing so in an open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. Executive session under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, part-time lunch recess monitors, and elementary principal. The committee will not return to open session. Can we have a roll call, please? Aye.
Aye.